to get my back blown out in peace. You think I got time to talk about a divorce that's a year old?
The courtroom was silent until the judge finally ruled in Iman's favor. A heavy breath seemed to pass through the room, like everyone had been holding it for far too long. Teyana's face dropped. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stood frozen. Then, out of nowhere, tears began pouring down her face. Iman didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He just looked down and closed his eyes. And with that, the case that had torn a family apart for months came to an end. Iman Shumpert now had primary custody of his daughter, and the internet couldn't believe it. What happened behind closed doors to lead to this heartbreaking moment? Why did Teyana lose the child she once called her entire world? And what comes next for a family so publicly broken? 4 months, quiet tension had been building between Iman and Teyana. What started as private disagreements slowly turned into something much heavier. At first, fans only saw glimpses, an unfollow here, a cryptic tweet there. But behind the scenes, something major was unfolding. Iman had reportedly filed for full custody, citing serious concerns about their daughter's environment. He wasn't trying to tear Teyana down, but he believed their child needed more stability, more quiet, and more routine. According to sources close to him, he'd spent months gathering evidence. Videos, text messages, even statements from people who had seen how things were at home. It wasn't messy, at least not publicly, but it was determined. Teyana, on the other hand, fought just as hard. Her team argued that she was the parent who was always present, always consistent, that she had done everything she could to raise her daughter right. Most people expected a compromise. Joint custody, perhaps. But the final ruling shocked everyone, and changed everything. Inside the courtroom, the mood was tense. People weren't talking. They were just waiting. When the judge finally spoke and granted primary custody to Iman, you could hear the air get knocked out of the room. Teyana didn't speak. She just looked down, her shoulders shaking. One person sitting near her said she tried to keep it together but eventually gave up, wiping her eyes with trembling hands. Iman didn't gloat. He didn't react like a man who had won something. He just exhaled, slowly, deeply, like he'd been holding in pain for far too long. A source inside the room later said, he cried. But not loud. It was the kind of crying that comes from deep inside. Like relief. Like grief. Teyana quietly stood up and walked out, refusing to speak to the press, ignoring every camera outside. And just like that, a private war between two parents ended in the most public way possible. So why did Iman fight so hard in the first place? To those who know him best, the answer was simple. He was trying to protect his daughter from a storm she didn't deserve to be in. Over the past year, Iman had reportedly grown more and more concerned about the emotional weight his daughter was carrying. Arguments between adults had become more frequent. The energy at home, he believed, had become too unpredictable. He wasn't looking for control. He was searching for calm. According to friends, Iman stayed silent publicly because he didn't want to add to the noise. But behind closed doors, he was focused, determined, and crystal clear. One close friend said, it was never about hurting Teyana. He just didn't want his daughter growing up in chaos. That's what his court petition reflected, pages and pages of examples where he chose peace, even when it hurt. And in the end, the judge sided with him. Not because he was perfect, but because he convinced the court that his daughter's emotional safety mattered more than anything. For Teyana, though, the loss hit like a brick wall. She's always been seen as a woman who's strong, in control, the one who doesn't break. But this broke her. As she walked out of that courtroom, one witness claimed she softly said, "He took her from me." That one sentence said everything. Teyana hasn't spoken publicly since the decision. No Instagram posts, no interviews, no statements. Nothing. Those closest to her say she's gone quiet because she simply can't process what happened. Others say she's furious. At the court system, at Iman's legal strategy, maybe even at herself. But mostly, they say she feels like she lost more than just custody. She lost her role, her identity as a mother, even if just temporarily. And for someone who built so much of her life around being there for her daughter, that kind of loss cuts deeper than words can describe. The internet, of course, exploded. As soon as the ruling hit the news, it spread like wildfire. Within minutes, tweets were flying, TikToks were being stitched, and comment sections turned into emotional battlegrounds. It wasn't just another celebrity headline. It became a moment people felt personally connected to. Everyone had something to say. For some, it was a victory. For others, it felt like a loss. But what was undeniable was how deeply it resonated. This wasn't about fame anymore, it was about parenting, pain, protection, and what happens when love dissolves and turns into a legal fight for the most precious thing, a child. Some fans immediately rallied behind Iman. He was praised as the kind of father who didn't need to shout or post his feelings online. He simply showed up when it counted. He's been the quiet one all along. One tweet read, "He didn't talk, he moved. And he protected his kid." There were threads about how he had stayed respectful during the public fallout, how he never threw shade, how he kept things private while still being visibly present in his daughter's life.
It wasn't performative. It was consistent.
And in the world of social media, where noise often drowns out substance, his silence had finally spoken volumes. At the same time, others came rushing to defend Teyana. They said the system had failed her, that no mother should have to face this level of public scrutiny on top of personal heartbreak. "We don't know what she's gone through," one post said.
"She's a mom first.
And whatever happened, it's clear she's in pain." Hashtags like #TeyanaBreaksDown, #ImanWins, and #CustodyShock flooded every corner of the internet. It wasn't just gossip. It turned into a cultural moment, sparking conversations about gender, custody, parental roles, and who gets believed in courtrooms versus in comment sections.
People were angry. People were sad. Some believed justice had been served.
Others felt something had gone terribly wrong. And in the middle of it all was a child whose life had just changed, even if the world was too busy arguing to notice the quiet impact of it all. With the court decision now final, speculation began taking over. Some fans believe Teyana isn't done, that she'll appeal the ruling, push to regain joint custody, and fight for a different outcome. Others think she might disappear from the spotlight altogether, needing space to grieve, to process, to recalibrate. There were whispers that she felt blindsided, that she hadn't expected the court to go this far. On the other hand, Iman's public image seemed to skyrocket in the aftermath. People began viewing him as the example of a modern father, grounded, focused, and emotionally intelligent. "He didn't go on podcasts," one fan commented.
"He went to court. Quietly." But not everyone believes this is the end. Some think this is just the beginning of something even more complicated. Because emotions this raw, this exposed, don't just go away.
They linger.
They stew.
They resurface. And the silence between Iman and Teyana now feels heavier than anything they've said aloud. Some fear that silence could become explosive down the road. Others hold on to hope. Hope that time will soften the anger, that they'll eventually find a way to co-parent with peace. That even if their relationship as partners is over, their relationship as parents can still be salvaged.
But right now,
it doesn't feel that way. Right now, things are cold,
tense,
unresolved,
and nobody knows what tomorrow might bring.
What makes this case even more powerful, beyond the celebrity names attached to it, is the bigger message it sends. For years, there's been a perception that courts tend to favor mothers in custody battles. That fathers often have to fight harder, prove more, sacrifice more to be seen as equal. But Iman's win changed that narrative for a lot of people watching. It showed that when a father shows up consistently, calmly, and with clear intentions, he can be heard.
He can be trusted.
He can be chosen, not just by his child, but by the system.
And that shift hit people in the heart. Because this wasn't about Iman trying to beat Teyana. It wasn't about revenge or pride.
It was about bringing stability to a situation that had clearly spiraled out of control. It's important to say that Teyana's pain doesn't disappear just because the ruling didn't go her way. Her love for her child isn't diminished.
Her heartbreak is still real.
And her silence doesn't mean she's wrong. It might just mean she's exhausted. Parenting in the public eye is already a difficult, unfair burden. Doing it while navigating a breakup, a new relationship, and now a custody shift?
It's overwhelming.
But what can't be overlooked is the reality that sometimes, the quieter parent is the one carrying the heaviest load.
The one making the hardest choices when no one is watching.
The one stepping up in moments that don't trend, that don't get posted, but matter more than anything else. Iman walked out of that courtroom not with a victory dance, not with flashy smiles for the cameras, but with something far more sobering, a deep sense of responsibility.
He didn't win a trophy. He didn't win a spotlight. He walked away with the future of a little girl in his hands.
And that's not something to be celebrated with hashtags or viral edits. That's something to be handled with care, with humility, and with a commitment to putting her first every single day. There are no real winners in situations like this. Just people trying to do what they believe is right. Just parents making choices, sometimes in pain, sometimes in fear, often without a roadmap. The court may have made a decision, but the journey is far from over. Co-parenting isn't a one-time agreement, it's a lifelong commitment. One that will be tested again and again, especially under the weight of broken hearts, public pressure, and lingering wounds that words alone can't heal. And maybe, in time, the noise will quiet. Maybe the headlines will fade. Maybe the world will move on to the next story. But for Iman, for Teyana, and most of all for their daughter, this isn't just a trending topic.
This is life now.
A new chapter that they'll have to write together, or at the very least, side by side. Even if they never speak again in public. Even if forgiveness never fully comes.
They are still linked.
Still bound by love that, once upon a time, created something bigger than both of them.
A little girl who deserves peace.
And who will, hopefully, one day look back, not at the pain, but at the people who fought hard to give her something better. So now we ask you, if you were the judge, what would you have done? Do you think Iman made the right choice, or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this one is going to divide opinions for a long time. And if you believe fathers deserve a voice in parenting too, hit that like button. Subscribe for more real stories, because custody isn't just a legal battle.
It's emotional. It's raw. And it leaves marks on everyone involved.